who is excited for engineering? Who's actually thinking, oh yeah, this is the gameplay for me? This is when Star Citizen, when I heard about Star Citizen, engineering was exactly what I was looking for. And then who, on the other hand, is absolutely mortified at the idea of them putting them in the game. Now, I know there's plenty of in between. I'm not asking about you guys. I want to know the extremes. I want to know the people who are very excited for this and the people who really don't like it. We're going to sit down with Thorsten and Guillermo and talk about this new game system coming online. I wish Dan Truffin was here, but I guess he's busy.
Hello everybody, welcome to another special edition of Star Citizen Not So Live. I'm your host Jared Huckabee, and if you've never seen Star Citizen Live before, it's usually where we take about an hour at the end of our week and we sit down with our developers and we discuss their work, their lives, their habits, their love of chicken. On this week's show, we are pre-taped because I'm going to Bar Citizen Milan this weekend, and we have a special guest here in the studio available to do a show live, so we thought we'd take advantage of that. Joining us on the show for the first half here are esteemed members of the EU-PU feature team. We got Thorsten and Guillermo. Thorsten, Guillermo, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you. Glad to be here.
There's nothing wrong with love for chicken.
There's nothing wrong with love for chicken.
Thank you.
All right, so you're here today because you presented the resource management presentation at CitizenCon this year. And we collected some questions and we tried to do a follow-up show about 2 weeks ago, and we unfortunately had some terrible network and computer-related problems. We weren't able to finish your show, so thank you for being here. Thorsten, can I ask, what brings you to Manchester in person? It wasn't this. I don't have that kind of budget.
No. Actually, it's two reasons. So one is the restructure that will happen next year. So meeting the folks that come over from the squadron team and get to know them. So because they will be working closely with me on the PU. And the second, more important for the community, is actually the release, or the soon to be released structural salvage, because we have our go no go at the end of the week, and because of the importance of the feature, we decided it makes sense to come over and help the team to get it ready.
Well, that's the virtue of Frankfurt just being a hop, skip, and a jump over the channel anyway.
Yeah.
So
That is a really crucial feature. Also a huge one. It's kind of surprising how quickly they're getting into the game after showing us just the prototype earlier this year. It's one of the features that I had said, I think I had said at the beginning of this year that I thought would come in this year, and then by the midpoint this year, I was like, okay, they're probably not going to do it. So it'll be interesting to see if they get it in. We'll get that news on Wednesday. It'll break a lot of hearts or make a lot of days. Excited mostly just to see what the implementation looks like, because we just saw the prototype. You know, what did they do?
A few weeks ago, we put up a thread collecting questions. We collected those questions from you, the Star Citizen community, and let you vote up which ones you wanted to see answer most. Then Guillermo and Thorsten went through the questions and pulled the questions that they felt they had the best answers for, and we're just going to jump into it. So the first question, which actually is sort of answered by our SRV episode that just aired yesterday by the time people see this, will soft death ships be repairable? We know from ISC the answer is yes, but can you give us any more information on this? How does this work?
So the first thing is that soft death is a bit of a temporary solution. We don't have the full damage penetration. We showed a placeholder for it at CitizenCon. And I think everybody saw the Maelstrom presentation with the ships breaking apart. Mm-hmm. So that's going to be part of it. What we right now have for soft death eventually will be more of a systemic thing, in that some ships, if they kill your power plant or they kill all your relays, or you have a very bad crash landing and you no longer have wings, or your ship is no longer able to fly or to move under its own power, there will be some degree of repairs you can do manually if you get spare parts, or you've got engineers working on it. But as you mentioned, the SRB is also the solution when that ship cannot fly. There's nowhere to repair it on the field. You just throw it back to a base and do the regular repairs there.
So I understand. So like I said, right now we have this soft death. It's this the entire thing doesn't just destroy; it just becomes kind of a potentially useless hulk. Mm-hmm. But with the SRV, we'll now be able to grab it with a tractor beam and pull it back to a repair station and get it repaired instead of waiting for the insurance payout.
The repair isn't in yet, so you will be able to move it, and but repairing, I think, doesn't. We didn't prepare it for that yet. So there is no drop-off points yet with the SRV. But for the future, that will be the case, that you have like the dedicated drop-off points where you can then fix the ships that you cannot repair on site anymore, especially the bigger ships with because there's the concept of size 1 and size 2 ship items you can replace, right? You can pull them out with a tractor beam and pull something or push something back in to that, whereas with like the bigger items, size 3 and size upwards, you cannot remove. So if they are destroyed, you lost them, and then you need to bring the ship that is now dead in the water into the hangar and have it repaired there.
Gotcha. So after 322, some version of you'll be able to bring the soft death ships back to specific places to get them repaired.
No.
So you can bypass the recovery thing. And then, of course, as Maelstrom and more elements of the physicalized damage system comes online, soft death itself goes away.
No.
And it just becomes, your ship can now be disabled through a variety of methods and therefore resolved and fixed through a variety of methods. Okay. Next question. With the implementation of the engineering role, how hard will it be for a solo player to fly a multi-crew ship like the Cutlass, Constellation, or anything bigger?
So it will be harder, but only it will be harder if you have a ship that already has a certain age. So if you have your brand new ship that you just pulled out of your hangar for the first time, the wear and tear is non-existent on it. So that means that there is no maintenance required. So if you prepare the energy management on the ship, no matter the big the ship is, you can fly it on your own. But does it really make sense? Because then you are suddenly on the move, then you might get attacked, so parts will get destroyed on your way. That will result in, you from the pilot seat have to get up and then walk over to those destroyed pieces and repair them. So yes, you can do it, but like it will be a real like pain to actually maintain your ship. So
This is pretty consistent with the messaging we've had since the beginning of this. We introduced the idea of the engineer role at CitizenCon 2952, then followed up on it with an ISE towards the beginning of this year, and then you guys followed up on it with the resource management presentation at this year. So we've done 3 pretty, hefty deep dives.
Normally I would pull those up so we could go over them, but we've done that like 3 times this year. I'll try to link those episodes down below, but they're a pretty easy search on the channel if you want to check them out. There's a lot of stuff that has gone into engineering over the last few years. It's a big system. This is one of the biggest things they've ever done. This might be the biggest feature change they've ever put into the game. It's like there's a lot of big features, but at this point, I think the ones that affect ships like Maelstrom and engineering are the kind of widest reaching, most intensive ones to implement. So we'll see how this goes. But if you want to see more of the history of how this came together, I'd check out those videos.
Dives into this idea of engineering and the resource management system. And through all 3 of them, it's been pretty clear, like this doesn't make it impossible to operate by yourself. It's just going to make it easier and more effective if you bring friends, if you bring talented and skilled friends who understand these roles. But if you're willing to put in the elbow grease.
And that was always very important to us, that we make sure that we don't block away the content for players that really would like to fly out their ship.
Yeah.
And it works. They can travel from A to B, and like if they avoid combat and if they make sure that they maintain it, like when they have the time to actually maintain it and bring down the wear and tear again, sure, it will run smoothly, like with fresh cars, right? So you can also have a fresh car that just doesn't break that easily, right?
Yeah.
See,
it also comes down
this
to,
is like the way they're saying that is very low key, but that's probably the most important statement of this whole thing, is that this isn't going to kill these ships for solo players. I think there is a minimum of gameplay you should be able to do solo in a big ship. But as he's saying, like, this is like getting into a large cruise ship or a large boat of any sort and trying to drive it. At some point, you'll need more people to do it well, but you can make it happen for yourself. You can do some of the stuff. You can get from one place to another. You can carry the stuff you need to or the vehicles you need to. You just can't start running that ship at its peak performance, which I think is the important distinction.
To the difference between single fighters or any ships with interiors. And if you're in a fighter, you lose a component, well, that's it. Your wing is gone. You cannot stop and, attach it again. or well, any of your internal components
That
get hit,
attitude.
you're dead. When you're with a multi-crew ship, I mean, you can just take that damage and accept that you no longer have shield generators. The difference obviously is if you have a crew, they can put out fires, they can really mitigate that damage, or find solutions for stuff that if you're solo, well, it's going to be more complicated. But again, the ship works. It's not like we're going to purposefully make multi-crew ships bad, or like worse. It's kind of the opposite. If a multi-crew ship with a crew ends up being more survivable, more effective, because again, it has all these redundancies. If it's on fire, you can put it out. If there's a missing component, you can replace it.
It's kind of just
which is
logic.
something you don't get.
Building an effective
you have
base
more hands.
line for a single player, and then finding ways to improve the experience by adding friends.
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna be the same if we're talking about turrets. Obviously, you have friends in the turrets. Well, you can shoot better because you actually have access to those guns. Or if you get boarded or somebody stows away, if you have more friends inside, well, again, that's also a plus.
Kind of
with your
fits
friends,
too,
my friends
because this
also.
game isn't necessarily one where you compare numbers. I mean, I know people compare numbers when it comes to ships, but there's a lot of this game that comes from like feel and understanding. The whole skill-based aspect of this game and trying to make people pay attention to what they're doing, it falls in line with this as well. You kind of you go and you crew your ship. You got to think about logically what you're going to need to run that ship, not necessarily fill like a name on a list per se.
If you send a UPU playtest, yeah, it tends to be we kill ourselves accidentally. So
You had something you were thinking about adding there, Torsten.
What?
No? Okay, good.
No.
Let's see. Next question is about repair. Are mini games planned to fix things, or is it just nothing but magic beams over and over and over again?
So there were plans for having more bespoke repair, but that will not be part of the initial release. We will just go for the simple solution first, and then we will observe how that actually is perceived by the community. And if there is the necessity to actually make it more complex or more bespoke per item, then sure, we will think about that. But for now, it is really a very simple repair mechanic for the items, and then we will see. Because what we don't want to do is like you need to read a handbook to actually understand, like, okay, what item do I actually need? What resistor do I need? Like, what capacitor do I need? It doesn't make sense that we have to make people study our game to actually be able to play it. So it's still a game.
Well, that's actually... When they describe deep space probing, they talk about how we'd be able to scan and get signatures of ships and stuff. And if you know the game well enough, you know those signatures by sight rather than needing to look it up or consult something else. And I feel like that is kind of what some people are looking for, Not necessarily the idea that you have to study in order to play, but like you need to study maybe just to be the best. And I'm guessing that's where they're leaning towards. I'm sure he doesn't mean this as like an overall overarching aspect of the game. But yeah, the idea of like needing to know that really deeply is kind of nice for the more in-depth stuff.
We have to make people study our game to actually be able to play it. So it's still a game. We are a simulation-driven game, so we want to tailor to that. But we really want this feature also to be out, so we don't want to like overcomplicate it and then block the release of it. Yeah. So
it's hard because there isn't one brush you can paint all Star Citizens with. Yeah. There are folks who want that 15-person
nerds
multi-crew capital ship experience. There are people who want to be alone in a starfarer out in the wilderness, just helping people with nobody else's like this. And then there's 100 brushes in between. So finding that sweet spot is always a bit difficult. But I agree with this idea that you get it out in a simplistic in a functional form, and then you see how it fits with everything else that makes up the entire physicalized damage system, and then it's like, okay, if it does need more complexity, then we add more complexity, and it could be that all the other complexity we add for all the other systems is plenty, and repair is just fine with a simple beam kind of thing. So
yeah, and though that applies to
it's weird the way they're answering this, because I'm pretty sure we all don't expect it to just be a beam. At least most people who have been following the development, I think, expect them to build on this and add more to the gameplay. What we're seeing in repair isn't the start, but it's also weird because they're not just outright saying that. They're talking about maybe considering keeping it as a beam, and I'm like, guys, that's not... It feels like there's more aspects to repair than just a beam. Like, you have to replace fuses, you have to replace components. We have subcomponents, right, that are supposed to be part of these systems, replacing subcomponents inside of the components. Like, we've already seen that there's more to repair than just shooting a beam at a thing. So it's strange that they're not just coming out and saying that.
Actually repairing the item with the beam, obviously you still have the damage control of the whole ship, which involves, you can have fires, you can have bad atmosphere, you can have, well, actually loss of atmosphere or, well, toxic atmosphere due to a fire. Or you could also have relays being knocked out, and you need to figure out which items to, turn off or turn on to compensate and keep fighting as well as you can until somebody can repair that. So there is already a degree of complexity to the damage handling, but yeah, the main thing is going to be right now for repairing just the beam, and we'll see.
Yeah, but actually, you mentioned that we already have some items that need bespoke repair. So we have the fuses for the relay that needs to be exchanged. So that is a type of repair. We also have life support that is its own type of complexity with the scrubbers that you need to exchange to actually, like, at some point they will deplete. So this is also something that can be counted as
Okay.
Maintenance or repair in this regard.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, like Guillermo just said, fire is its own danger. So that is definitely something that has a bespoke counter to it, which is the extinguisher or even venting the rooms. So there are some things that are already a bit more complex than, like, in comparison what we showed at CitizenCon, repairing the power plant, which is, you use the beam to repair it. But yeah, as said, so we have already a lot of complexity, and well, I wouldn't say that our team is the best in handling multi-crew gameplay, but like we try to be good, and it's really hard to manage. Like, even with the amount of people that we had on the ship, you saw us fail in the CitizenCon demo. We blew up. That wasn't intention that we blew up. We wanted to have a nice success at the end of the demo, but yeah, I was like, yeah, okay, let's leave it in. But yeah, so there's a lot of complexity already there.
You make a very good point. I want to be sure we shot. Now, unfortunately, we had to, certain aspects of your presentation, it says we had to rush through because unfortunately, somebody had to be scheduled after the Star Engine presentation, and they
always scheduling woes,
and deservedly so. But one of the key hallmarks is you were developing the presentation is not wanting to fake anything, not wanting to script anything. You were going to set up the scenario and just fly the ship, and whatever was going to fail was going to fail, however it was going to fail, and you were going to deal with it however you were going to deal with it. And I really appreciated that when watching it, going, oh, they didn't succeed. It's like, well, sometimes that's what's going to happen. And I think that's one of the hallmarks of Star Citizen is we try to present as honest and as forthright a picture of things as we can whenever possible. And that, yeah, it's like we tried to save it. We didn't do it that time.
Yep.
Speaking of that demonstration,
right.
This next question says, earlier in ISC we saw subcomponents for generators, coolers, and all that stuff, and it even has its own damage model. But in the CitizenCon demo, it looks like this type of engineering doesn't exist. Have subcomponents been replaced by relays, or they just weren't part of that demo?
So, I mean, I guess the fuses for the relays are part of the subcomponents we have, and we also, the life support system also has a set of subcomponents.
All right, so for anybody who doesn't know, subcomponents are essentially components for components. So this would be inside of your component, and you would be replacing them. When your component takes damage, the subcomponents are breaking. So when you're talking about, I think Vastin was kind of referring to, people were talking about health-wise. I'm thinking what might happen is either these subcomponents will give your components buffs, or they will be the health of your subcomponent. So you drop to a certain amount, one of your subcomponents busts, you have to go over, take it out, put it back in, you're back at 100% health. It might be a little different from that. They might explain that right here, but this is the footage that we have on some components right now. So this is the case where maybe NPC crew, this is just showing how AI would interact with it actually. Obviously they'd be similar to us. We're not as dramatic. Look at this guy, he's like It's right here, buddy. It's just right here. But you can see that there are little slots inside of the component that you'll be able to reach in, grab, take out, change out. He's just inspecting, doing his NPC stuff. But we also have some close-ups.
Here, we've got the manufacturers going along here, and aside each one, you'll see a destroyed state. The idea is that over time, these become worn and eventually destroyed. That's why you need to replace them. So each one has its own broken variant.
Okay, that's the first bit, and then we have a little bit of a more of a like in the actual component view here.
You'll see here from the inside the interior here that the sub-items are quite dense and complex in design, especially when compared to the exteriors. Another thing that's quite important to us is brand identity. So other than the obvious decals with logos on littered about, we want the forms to describe the manufacturer. So in this Aegis one, you've got a lot of flowing shapes, a lot of double chamfers, quite sophisticated, where in contrast you've got lightning power where everything's a bit more utilitarian, there's more function over form.
Because detail and everything, right? So that's kind of an art. Obviously, it's more of an art look at what subcomponents are supposed to be, and then we have some tech animation.
Display the sub-items in front of the player so you can pull them out and put new ones in.
Basically just showing how they're going to animate when we work with them, and
we
a little bit of concept art.
We are working on the sub-items that will be used to customize the performance of ship components, and making sure that when that feature comes online, there is a wide selection of visuals to support the gameplay.
For my my oldies but goodies in chat, y'all who have been around for a while, you might recognize that this last video was in the around the verse format rather than the ISC format, where the studio heads report from each studio about what's going on that month. So this is old. Like they've been sitting on this for a while. And again, like every time we go over these features, it just shows that like they're not getting rid of these plans that they've had and talked about. They just put them away until they're ready to do them. And I think that's what they're going to talk about here.
Scrubbers, for example.
And not only the scrubbers, but
yeah. And well, we were also thinking, maybe some components we were thinking about the other day may need to be subcomponents of maybe the CPU or of the avionics system or of the power plant. So yes, but only the way to say it would be like, yes, we have some components, they're still going to exist in some form, but only if it really makes sense if it's adding some functionality, because that's where just modeling health with.
You don't need to drill down on every single thing just because we need to drill down on every single thing.
Yeah, that's like our credo, or it started to be our credo, which is like we really want to have meaningful gameplay rather than complex gameplay for the complexity's sakes. So this is like something that is starting to be very, very important for us.
So they'll probably pick some like halfway point between what we were just looking at and what they're talking about here, that simplifies components but doesn't get rid of them, or subcomponents rather.
And but also to answer concretely on that question, so we have them on our plan. They are not currently planned for the initial release because there are several reasons, but like especially content would just kill us if we would just say, by the way, we want to have some components for every item, and then
we're often fond of saying bring it to the point of realism, then bring it back to the point of fun.
Exactly.
Like this, I just saw this wonderful,
Jared loves that one.
Wonderful 25th anniversary documentary for Half-Life.
Yeah, exactly.
Done by a guy I really respect, Dan O'Dwyer, who he and his team made it for Valve and whatnot. And there's this wonderful moment where Gabe is just like, I don't play video games to be real. It's like I got realism in the real world. That's not fun. It's not going to play video games to be fun. There's always this balance. I think there's this misnomer that everything has to be uber realistic, and I'm like, no, it has to be evocative of realistic. It has to have a sense of realism and stuff whenever possible. But you always got to bring it back to fun, and again, not dragging things down with unnecessary chores.
Yeah.
I mean, how many DLCs have we ever seen for a game that just seems like a whole new world of chores have been added? It's like, why was this added to this game? I didn't need more chores.
That's such a debate, though,
especially
because like, who decides what's unnecessary? Some people would say that hygiene in this game is unnecessary, but you can also make the case that hygiene is important because it adds a consequence to you not paying attention to your character. It's like, it's just constantly shifting debate about what's most important for the game, and at the end of the day, I guess it mostly comes down to the directors and Chris, right? Like, they can't include everything that we want.
something that we always have to consider. Like every bit that we add adds to the time it actually takes to get to the gameplay that you actually want to consume.
Yeah. No, I think actually one subcomponent that you may see, it's since the resource network doesn't apply only to ships, it also applies to locations. And one example is for puzzles, for repairing a sub-network in a particular location as part of a mission, you may get, you need to swap out these parts, which may be bespoke or may also be the same kind of parts we use in ships. So it really depends on the level of complexity we want to add to a particular area of gameplay.
So we're talking about relays. We have relays for power. Are there any plans for additional relay type points for coolant, fuel, or data?
So all
that'd
of
be
those
sick.
actually go through the same set of relays. That means generally if you knock out a relay, all the resources you want to get to the items stop flowing that way. What we do have is kind of the opposite. It's relays that do not allow some resources through. This makes sense if you think of a starfarer. We have the external tanks on one side and you have the internal tanks, and when you're giving fuel to some dude, you don't want to be draining your internal fuel tanks. And as far as the game is concerned, they are the same thing. They're just fuel tanks. Why cannot I take fuel from them? So we added relays that do not allow that kind of connection between both sides of the network. But we still obviously can have an alternate bypass that is turned off by default, and if you want to do that, we would allow it. But yeah, as a general rule, most ships or most situations, you're going to have all the resources going through the same route, and if you lose the connection, well, that's it.
That would be so cool if you could hack into if you're in a large ship, let's be topical and say the Arastra. If you sneak on board and you can hack into a relay to get limited access to other computer components or parts of the ship or something, like a data feed instead of just getting their power and stuff, that'd be really cool. Or maybe you can hack their actual data from the ship. Ooh.
I really like this question, actually. So obviously, there's a generic setup for ships, and different ships will have different numbers of relays and different complexities and stuff. We've been using the Hammerhead as a wonderful example. We showed the Hercules at CitizenCon, so like this. Will there be a difference between the problems and issues and the capabilities between manufacturers? Like they're specifically asking, he goes, will Drake have more electrical faults on average than like an Origin ship? Drake owners suffer, quite a bit in the Precision universe, mostly just because they like Drake. But is there anything manufacturers? I'll get off of it. So are there any manufacturer-specific things built in for this?
There are actually two answers to that question.
Okay.
So the first part is every ship will have a somehow bespoke layout of where the relays will be located and how they will be connected. There will be differences between military ships, civilian ships, with military ships having more relays than civilian ships to allow for more redundancy.
Solid.
There will be also differences between
these
manufacturers,
are
because
that's like one of those little things that when a ship comes out and people are like, this is look at that component, this thing is going to be much better, or look at how many guns this has and stuff like that. And then they talk about these kinds of, there are levels of quality and levels of sort of redundancy, and a military ship having more redundancy also falls in line with some of these ships have thicker armor than other ships. So even though now they might seem underpowered or not good enough for their role, in the future they'll be a lot better because those things kick online. A big one of those would be the Terrapin.
just like the way that their ships are looking, because we have to fit the relays on them, and that also dictates how the relay or the resource network is actually set up. And so there comes the first difference from. And the second is ship item manufacturers. So it's less Drake itself. So if you have like a very expensive power plant you put in your Drake ship, it will not suddenly work worse.
Because it's sitting in a Drake housing.
Because it's sitting in a Drake ship. No, it will still
No, that's simply not true. It does work worse. It's been, I've heard it. Drake, when you touch Drake metal, you just drop a tier of quality. I'm sorry, folks. It's just good fun.
The wear and tear rate will be different. So if you invest more money in your ship items, they are less likely to be affected by wear and tear. malfunctions might be even triggered less often. So item choice will matter in that regards. So even like coming back to the single player, so if you invest a lot of money into your ship and buy the best items ever, you even reduce the amount of like interactions you have to have with the item. So it's more likely that you don't have to run around alone in your ship and try to fix it.
Yeah, and also in addition to brands, I think we already have it in game. You have the different classes of items. In the sense, you have the competition, military, industrial, civilian. That's also part of the balancing there. Competition item will probably have a very short lifespan because it's, we expect you to, to go after the race, go back, change it altogether or repair it, while an industrial or military part is expected to be in the field for a longer time. So that will affect, the wear and tear rate, and obviously, therefore,
So
some of the other
component system and everything,
Yeah.
not all Drake ships will be created equally. You'll
so
get to customize the ship.
The grades will get a different meaning, like the types will get a new meaning to that.
Yeah. Oh, also, since again, this goes back to the damage system, which also, because we, without damage penetration and stuff like that, we don't actually get the fires or the actual damaging of the components. There, the ships also become a bit more relevant. The armor, what materials the manufacturers use normally. We already have some differences planned on. This brand usually uses this type of alloy, which has some certain properties, which is how you get lighter ships or heavier ships.
That's nuts. Like, if the Gattax Yulin uses a certain type of material, in Star Citizen proper, we would have to source that material, right? So, like, what if it's just not in the same system? Like, what if nobody has that material? How's that going to work? That could be hefty. I feel like they're going to have to go around that in some way. Because you can't just be like, there's no material for your ship. Guess you're just going to have to keep going that way. Maybe everything will use one standard alloy for like base coat. I don't know.
Armor ships, as a rule.
Sometimes I feel bad about making fun of Drake owners, but we're all just having fun, folks. It's in the lore of the universe that the universe generally looks down on Drake owners. None of us think anything less of you. Think I am a Drake guy. If you look at my ships, I'm mostly a Drake person. I love the Drake aesthetic. I'm a big fan of Jim Martin, who invented most of the Drake aesthetic, going all the way back to the Cutlass. So just know that it's always in good fun, because you've all suffered clearly enough with bad taste liking Drake. I'm one of you. Next question. Will there be any kind of danger to the engineer in case of bad component manipulation? Component blowing up in your face?
Well, I mean, the obvious one is if something overheats, it's part of the things that drives into the malfunctions or, the dangers popping up. So yeah, bad heat management, for example, could suddenly lead to, a power surge going through the ship and killing components, or fire starting in front of you, maybe setting you on fire if you're unfortunate. So yeah, to some degree, you can make things worse. You can always make things worse. But we're not going to insta-kill you just because, you punch at a component to fix it.
And actually, that's the good part of the entire change that will come, which is we are more item focused. So it is less like a dramatic death with the entire ship directly exposed. No, you will start losing items first, and then you might be dead in the water for a long time.
Yeah.
Until someone picks you up, and that is all the consequence. You're just dead in the water if the right components break at the right time.
That's
if the wrong component.
This is a big part of Death of a Spaceman. A lot of people are worried about the idea of I'm going to say limited lives. It sounds worse than it is. A lot of people are worried about the idea of limited lives in this game, because of how much we die right now. Your ship just explodes. I mean, we have soft death, but that doesn't really do much. In the future, your ship will not explode. Like your ship will get ripped apart. It won't work. It will be just a floating husk, and you'll still be alive on the inside. Maybe, depending on what happens. So the idea of dying won't be as much. It still might be high, but these are one of those things to keep in mind when it comes to talking about Death of a Spaceman, stuff like that.
Breaks at the wrong time. So if your quantum drive, for example, explodes because of a malfunction, that might have a consequence that is very similar to what we have right now, that the entire ship explodes.
So it can
And the
happen.
power plant specifically, you know, soft death really, what it sort of models is either the power plant, you know, died in a peaceful way, so to speak, or you lost your relays, something like that, which, you know, you just lost power. What we currently have for big explosions is more like the reactor took a critical hit, it went, you know, on its critical load, nobody did anything about it, it exploded.
I don't want to focus too much on this, but the idea that I could pull a component out and work on it and potentially catch a fire, and potentially cause a fire, rather, makes me think of the opportunities for sabotage.
It's something we thought about, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, since you can also damage the components with FPS weapons, and you know, obviously you can just take out the fuses or even small components. You can steal them all together. There's a lot of things, a lot of damage a person hiding inside your ship could do.
And I'm just thinking about this. A lot of Star Citizens, have come from a game like EVE Online or something where, it's, you pretend to be somebody's friend, you become a member of their crew, in the course of a mission, you slowly pulling components out and tuning them incorrectly, to cause malfunction. So there's a whole gameplay opportunity there that's exciting.
See, I feel like that kind of stuff's going to make me a lot less trusting in this game. I think that's why it's important to have an org in your back pocket. Not one that you always have to play with, but one that you know when you're going to need help doing something in game. Because we all might play this as a single player game, but at some point, you might want to do something that requires 2 people or 3, That could be using a certain type of vehicle or trying a certain type of mining expedition. I don't know. It's just there's always a chance you might need more people. So having an org in your back pocket that is held accountable to the same rules that you know isn't going to screw you over like he's describing, I think is going to help quite a bit.
I think with the last system, we have a very good counter for that, which is, once you find a guy, you can just throw them out of an airlock.
Let's see. With ship life support, will opening doors automatically cycle airlocks to minimize wasted oxygen in the atmosphere?
No.
Yeah, like if there's an airlock, airlocks work like an airlock is supposed to work. They will actually cycle in, probably ideally in a smart way. If there's good air outside and good air inside, no need to cycle. But in most cases, the airlock will behave as a real-world airlock suit. On the other side, if you open the door of, let's say, you open the cargo bay of an H2 while you're in space, well, there goes your air.
Yeah.
But not all ships are ideal for all scenarios. Some of them are, have these EVA suit lockers, and they have these double airlocks and, particular paths to get to space, which are safe. In others, they are not really that good for that. Obviously, you can always bend your ship so you don't lose the air, but that also comes with its own challenges. Your engineer or whoever is on the console needs to manage it properly. So that's also where part of the ship roles will come in, which are better built for certain scenarios versus others.
Yeah. You don't want to add too much automation to it because you want to leave the agency in the hands of the players, and to be both good at managing it and to be bad. That's a certain agency too. Like some people like being bad at Star Citizen.
Yeah.
On David.
Yeah, we cannot make it too safe, else you don't get hurt and it's not funny on YouTube.
Will we need to memorize ship layouts, or will we have the ability to target subsystems as well as our point of impact directly? Or will that require more advanced scanners or dedicated scout ships like the Terrapin or Hornet Tracker to allow sharing this information across the wing of ships? So basically, is there a reward for the more that you personally understand the layouts of ships and where to shoot and where these components are for bullet penetration and stuff?
See,
or
now,
is the scanner system just...
Let's see what they're going to say about this. But again, this is going back to that idea of some people do want to study the game to play it well. Some people want to memorize the layout of a ship so that they can be the absolute best hammerhead engineer there is out there. So there's this scale of, the game will have these naturally occurring things that you need to study. I feel like maybe they should also include some in the features that they're making too.
Going to take it all for us.
Well, we're going to have subcomponent targeting. It kind of exists in some form in the game, but it's not really...
I think Yogi showed it even at CitizenCon.
Yeah, actually, for the turrets, obviously it will also be used for stuff like, try to hit the power plant or try to hit any other internal component. At the same time, yes, if you know it, if you know where each SIP's components are, you already know where to shoot. Obviously, the targeting helps you, but anything you bother to learn or any experience you have is always going to be superior, I think. Especially when it comes back, you mentioned sabotage. In that case, your use of scanners is a bit more limited, and knowing exactly where you need to go, how to deal the most damage, it's always a good skill to have.
We talked a little bit about scanners and anti-scanners last week with the FPS and flight teams and stuff. And Chris has always maintained throughout the course of this project's development that there will be counters to all of these technologies. It's like as you develop scanning, you also develop jammers and stuff. And it's like if I've got a level 2 scanner, then my scanner can overcome a level 1 jammer. But if they've got a level 3 jammer, then my level 2 scanner is going to have some trouble until I go and swap it out.
Your gold elite scanner level 6 is too powerful for my beginner level 3 scanner, counter scanner hacker guy. I wonder how much they would actually get into that. But they talked about this with the FPS stuff too, with like scanning and ping and being able to block those things. That's the one thing we've never seen. We've always seen the features, but we don't really see the counters. Except for, I think, with ships, you can turn off your ship to get rid of emissions, and you can hide behind things to avoid cross-section scans. But, like, they've really not dove much into that realm. And that's been the most disappointing thing for me, because, like, exploration and data and all that stuff is what I've been waiting for. So I do hope that they start to get more into this soon.
Level 4 scanner, this constant kind of escalation that happens in the real world. So yeah, if you find yourself jammed and whatnot, you can't target stuff. If you do know this stuff, if you do know, I'm very familiar with the Connie Phoenix. I know that the big relay, the big central relay is right around here, and the damage system, the full damage system is online with proper penetration and everything, and you can draw fire on that. You'll be rewarded for that kind of information.
We even had that already in our demo, right? So we have a faked penetration there, and because we knew where we need to shoot, we could potentially target the power plant.
And SIPs have weak points, not necessarily made on purpose, but simply of the way they're built. The hull is not the same thickness in all places. The SIP components, are not distributed evenly. So knowing, if your weapon can make it through the hull and the seals, and that on that particular part of the SIP, it's easier to hit the components. That's all. I think that's always a win. Something good to practice and learn.
It's going to be interesting to see how that affects pilots and the way they fly too, knowing where your weak spots are and learning to not expose them during combat and stuff. It's got a lot. The resource management system has a lot of knock-ons to many aspects of gameplay.
And actually, that is what we're all looking forward to, right? So we really want this, that maneuvering and knowing your ship well gives you an advantage over you don't care about your ship.
For single crew vehicles, how will the pilot be notified that components need to be addressed?
Well, your ship will be on fire.
That works.
No, but it's currently you already have. With the new MFDs, you're going to have probably a better display. You already know that you have this like little picture of your ship in the MFD, and you say when you get hit, you see the the red mark, and the components slowly go red from blue. That's going to be part of it. Obviously, you also get the messages. I think if you play in the game right now, you already have the first set of misfires. These are the old ones, the seal failure or thruster surge, stuff like that.
Yeah. So this is a good chance for us to go. Let's open up the history books. Yeah. This is a feature they've been working on for a while. If you go back to I think 3.4, 3.3. Yeah. Look at that. Ship system degradation. Functionality for upgradable ship components, implementing wear and degradation causing reduced performance. This is the Terrapin, and this is the first ship they introduced us with. For any of you who remember how old the Terrapin is, that's back when they started making this stuff happen in games. So 2018, we started getting ship system degradation. And the patch before item 2.0 introduced power allocation, which was the previous pipe system, which is how they've mentioned they're upgrading the pipe system to the resource management system. So this read, functionality for ship components allowing for weapons and other items to overheat and be overclocked, as well as the ability to configure shield generators, power plants, weapons, and other systems to meaningfully affect ship performance. So what we have right now allows you to do this. For anybody who hasn't dipped into their power systems, you can change the way that power affects your components. You can shut them down, you can run them on stealth, you can lower your emissions. This is all existent in game, but it's never really been that important. So, you know, it's not many people are really caring that much. As time went on, they introduced a couple other components to this, the heat system, improvements to the system to provide more systemic experiences, covering a variety of issues and their effects on the vehicles, from how heat affects various components in a ship to incorporating heat values into the room system. This also defined ambient heat from solar systems. So we see this again when you're in your spacesuit and you look at your HUD, the temperature is always changing. That's kind of what this is about. This is also meant to add degradation to ship parts. I think I might actually have a couple of clips from that from back in the day. But ultimately, this never made that big a difference to the game. You probably notice this most when you get a torque imbalance, and that's your system not being able to properly power itself. So it's not like these are necessarily straight up new things, but as he's mentioning in the video and as you can see here, they are things that have existed in some way, so they've been moving in this direction. You got version 2 of degradation here, which also came with misfires, as he's talking about. And you might see this on your ship with thrusters. Sometimes they'll just stop thrusting, which is unfortunate considering their role. But yeah, that is kind of the history of where they've been so far with getting these sorts of things in, and the heat system and the thruster misfires and all that. It's there, but it hasn't been meant to matter as much yet. And it's starting to, especially with this engineering update.
You're gonna keep seeing that. That's also part of the new system. They are triggered, using the new logic, but they're still the same effects. But yeah, in general, it's gonna be mostly that, because as a pilot, you have very limited, on a single seat fighter, you have very limited action you can take against that. Obviously, you have your triangle capacitor, wheel. You can, put more power to the seals if your things are getting hit, but at the end of the day, if you are losing a cooler or something like that, other than turning off items altogether, there's really not a lot you can do, which is, the weak point of fighters. They don't really have that staying power in the end.
I realized I didn't show you guys the misfires. This is what they look like generally. You can see it here on the cutter. You get that kind of stuff, and then here on the Gladius, you can see it. So this stuff's in game. You can trigger it. Just got to do some damage.
Almost done. We've got time for maybe 3 or 4 questions, and then we'll let you go. Is the life support system in a room also tied to a fuse that can break? So I might lose access to controlling a room's atmosphere and be forced to go deal with the fire personally instead of just venting it.
Yes. Yeah, so it's even a bit more than just that the life support itself is connected to a relay. It's like each room has a vent that is then connected to its own relay. So it might even be that if a relay is destroyed or not connecting to the vent anymore, that you just lose connection to one of the rooms. Whereas, like, if you hit the life support cannot provide the rooms anymore. So that would be a total failure. But there's the concept of the vents that are sitting in each room, and they control the composition of the room, the temperature of the room. So if that then the vent loses the connection, you lose the control over that room, and you have to go in there or go to the relay, fix the relay, so that you have the control over the room again, or you go directly into the room to fix what broke there.
Yeah, or you could just open a door, or I guess a
or
window.
open a door.
It can be dangerous in space, but you can do that.
Actually, that is also a good counter. So because what the question was before, like, do we automatically cycle? No, and that helps there, right? So you can open the door to the room that is currently not connected anymore and make then oxygen flow from one room to the other, or even vent the other room so that the room that is currently on fire, you don't have any control anymore, is then venting the other room with itself so that you can deplete the fire there.
Instructions unclear. My spaceship exploded. I needed more than that. Maverick, thank you for the sub. Adam, how you doing? Welcome in.
Support. Where does the air come from? Is it stored in tanks, or does the life support component take electricity and simply generate air?
Yeah, well, that is an open discussion right now. So it might change. So as of now, we have a tank that stores the atmosphere that you have in your rooms. So if you have a room, let's take an example with one room, and you want to vent that room. We don't vent the atmosphere in that room outside. We vent it into an auxiliary storage so that you don't lose it, because we see the atmosphere as a finite resource, and you should really care about your atmosphere in space because it's a precious resource, right? And so you vent it into the storage, so you have the room now completely empty with the atmosphere, and if you decide to fill the room again, it is taking the atmosphere from that storage back in. Sure, we also thought about, okay, what happens when you accidentally vent it? So we have some auxiliary atmosphere sticks that you can put in, and then we, by chemical reaction, magically create an atmosphere for that room or for the rooms of the ship. But the idea is that you always have these storage that you have to manage. So you fill it because and you have this concrete finite amount of atmosphere on your ship that you have to manage.
Yeah, and we also separate it along that way in the sense that there are tanks for oxygen and inert gases, but also for waste gases that we don't want in the atmosphere at all. There's different tanks. So yeah, managing it also limits how quickly you can get rid of good or bad air in both cases.
But also a nice way to catch atmospheres, actually, like if you lost, you did mismanagement and your auxiliary tanks are empty, and you're breathing through your suit and you're depleting the oxygen from your suit. So what you can do is go into an atmosphere of a planet, open all the doors, and then suddenly all the atmosphere rushes in. You close the doors and go up again.
You just oxygen scoop. That's fun. This is going to make, like Echo said in chat, oxygen and water are super important for space sims. So we're seeing that just start now. But I imagine this is going to be part of salvage. So you'll be able to siphon off oxygen and water from other ships. This will be part of, I guess, just straight up stealing from other ships. This will be part of espionage. Just gameplay surrounding oxygen and water is going to be cool to see expand, given our ships are becoming more floating areas of resources rather than just a ship that has an on and off mode. You walk through the doorway, and even if the door is open in space, you're still good and dandy. It's going to change.
You just have to make sure that the atmosphere of the planet is actually breathable. But that is also a valid way to fill your ship back with atmosphere.
It's kind of like, I'm imagining those cans of Perrier from Spaceballs.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. I think 2 questions left. How often will we encounter malfunctions and fires in normal gameplay? This question comes up after
every time, and every time it's the same answer. It's like fresh ships, very unlikely for any malfunctions. There might be some that are happening, but very minor ones. So you can even ignore them and live with them. But if you have a ship that has several hundred hours and the wear and tear is really, really low or really, really high, then you have to maintain it more often.
Yeah.
But we really want to make sure that it is not annoying for players. But this is something that we will balance once we have it out there and players give us feedback on it.
Yeah, it's really more about, for the long-term maintenance, it's more about some items being a bit less, I say, reliable. If you keep using it, it's kind of a way of telling you, hey, use something new. And with salvage and all the ways you have to get components, it's not that hard. Or you have to pay more attention to your components. But stuff like fires or anything really critical that is crippling, your ship is not gonna randomly burst into flames. That's more of a consequence of damage control. You're in a fight, you take a direct hit to a relevant component, you get an electrical fire. But so you shouldn't expect that to be cruising around Stanton and suddenly 3.
I love how they're like, yeah, we're going to balance this when it's in game and we'll make sure this is all good. But by now they've gotten so many foreshadowing complaints from us about like, how much is this going to affect us? Is our ship going to be terrible to fly? Like they're probably like, okay, so we've balanced this so it basically does nothing, and then we will move from there. He even said it there. He's like, yes, we get this every time. Yes, every single time I'm in camera. Thurston's just like, oh my god, I want this feature to come out so people stop asking me how much it affects them.
Your rooms are on fire and you die.
But we also want to reward player choices there. That is, if you decide to like run your ship only with 20% of the performance it could run in, like have the power plant always run at 20%. So basically underpower your ship. That also has an impact on the malfunction rate. So the less you push your ship, the more likely it is that there won't be any malfunctions. But also the other way, like if you are in a combat scenario and you like want more than 100% out of your ship items, sure, that will dramatically increase the chances for malfunctions.
Pretty logic based.
Is there an RNG factor in this though?
Yeah, sure.
Is it conceivable that somebody's just going to have a really bad string of luck?
Yeah, but it's dependent on the wear and tear, and it's the health of the item. So we have parameters that make it, gives us more control over when these are happening. But sure, there will be some RNG.
Yeah, for some of them, it's the conditions are more like thresholds. You know, you are overheating by this amount. You have the power throttle over this amount. So we know you're pushing your ship. At that point, we start rolling the dice from time to time, where either nothing happens or one of the maybe minor malfunctions happens or the moderate ones happen. For other cases, we just want to say, based on the wear and tear, even at that point it has to be very, very rare in the sense that yes, we do it randomly, but maybe the mean time is supposed to be days or something like that. Simply like it could happen, but we know.
Is there a more anticipated feature than this in terms of the fear people have about it affecting the game? Have we had a bigger deal thing? I think the change for the inventory system coming in was a fairly big one. The idea that people didn't have like they could just get everything from anywhere. But I don't know if there's another one that people have been so worried about that has come into the game finally.
I'm more interested in the player choice aspect. Overheating, running your ship at overclock all the time, stuff like that, which we think is more like, the cost for that choice you made.
I get you. Last question, and normally we avoid when questions and stuff like that, just because we've been talking about resource management engineering for about 13 months now since we first introduced it at CitizenCon last year. There's a lot coming to Star Citizen in 2024. At CitizenCon, we did 2 days worth of look at all this stuff. A big chunk of the squadron team is coming back to the PU. They're bringing all the work, or much of the work rather, that they've developed along with them. This was always the plan since we had Rich Tyrer on a SCL 2 years ago saying that they were switching this priority. We used to go PU and then into squadron, and we were switching the priority to go squadron and then into PU, for most of our feature stuff. We're now 2024 is now where we're going to see the big reaping of rewards of that technology, and everybody's very hyped for it, and appropriately so. Resource network not being one of those things that was developed in Squadron and brought over. Oh,
well, actually, for the CitizenCon, since Squadron had a requirement of to have the resource network.
Okay.
So because we want to get rid of the old pipe system, we actually move it from the PU, well, not from the PU, but from our feature stream to Squadron 42. We did all the development that was done for the CitizenCon, the UI, and the actually tying it to fires, fixing up the live support, all of that was done in the Squadron 42 stream. So in a way, it's actually
so even this, okay.
So in a way, it's actually coming back to.
All right. So okay, then the question is even more appropriate. What kind of time frame are we shooting for? I'm not gonna. Don't look into the camera and be like, it will be in this. Nobody would. I wouldn't believe.
Last time they talked about this, they told us it would be here, possibly sooner than we think. I wonder if. What do you guys think?
If you said that, but we have targets. What are we shooting for? What's the? You kept saying not in the first iteration. What's this first iteration of resource management intended to look like, And when are we shooting?
So we are targeting Q2 next year with the release of life support, fire, and the engineering gameplay, so the base resource
I'm
network.
surprised he's actually giving an internal target. They basically just put an item on the roadmap. I mean, we have our release view, and we can see up until, I mean, we can't even see our next 2 updates, right? We can only see our Q4 update of this year. So when 3.22 comes out, we won't see our 3.23 patch until probably February, I think, because they'll need all January to kind of plan out what's actually going to go into that. A lot of Squadron stuff is coming over. They've got a lot of meetings in January that they take a break at the end of December. So I wouldn't expect to see the new patch show up immediately, but maybe it will. We'll see. But essentially, they just put 3.24 or 4.0, I don't know, whatever it's going to be at that time. They just put the Q2 patch on the map, on the roadmap. Scary. Don't hold them to it, but that's solid that we'll get it by then. It's definitely not sooner than I thought we'd get it when they first told us about it earlier this year, but Q2 this year would be cool. I expect to see it by CitizenCon then, hopefully.
Fire and the engineering gameplay, so the base resource network with all the base functionality. So that will have also the repair beam with it, the item functionality that we showcased in the demo. So basically everything that you saw in the demo, that is the plan for Q2.
Awesome. Torsten, Guillermo, thank you so much. I'll let you get back to work. I know you've got that big go-no-go to get to. I appreciate you taking a little time for us and being over here.